actions anyway. So we did, Melissa, start to discuss, I'm sorry, we'll appoint you to, let's see, be in place of, who said she wasn't coming? Donna? No, it was Diane.
And
So you can be in place of Donna. How's that?
Sounds good.
And what we have to do tonight is to go through Mike's draft of the use table. And then there are other questions in the industrial zone. And some of those things spill over into business zones. But perhaps we should specifically list alcoholic manufacturing facilities in our regulations. And anyway, and the other thing is the zone, I-1 zone requires a minimum of 10 acres and a plot. And that seems a little much. So maybe we ought to consider changing that while we're working on these things.
well, it's more restrictive across the board. It has a larger front yard setback, side yard setback. So it's the more restrictive zone. But it allows what I would consider more industrial or less industrial type uses. So I was just wondering if we got that reversed at some point along the line.
Or should we switch the nomenclature? Just make one I-1, switch I-1 to I-2. And,
Well, we got a map out there that's a little more difficult to replace.
yeah.
Well, let me just remind everyone, we got working on the industrial zone only because of the idea of creating some sort of enhancements to the zoning that would encourage reuse of the structures that are emptying and are not have poor prospects for new tenants in the near future. And so we could make this, a soup to nuts revision and review and, intense debate about the industrial zone. But really all we started out to do was the uses and trying to enhance the opportunity for the landlords to attract new tenants. So I'm not discouraging more discussion, but we could be going meeting after meeting after meeting on some of this stuff. And
I think
we
you're
have
right.
other priorities, I think. Yeah.
Let's go through Mike's document line by line in the table and make any changes that we think are appropriate in those areas. And then we can discuss other things. The changes that you've made are deletions in red and additions in blue. Correct, Mike?
Yep, that's correct.
So that the first 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the table are no change. Do you see any reason to change any of those?
Well, I was thinking that the word, where it says medical research laboratories, it ought to say either research and medical laboratories or something to that effect, because the topic is sort of emerges again later. There's another reference to laboratories, if I remember right. And that one also is not very clear as to whether it includes, like you go over to when you have your blood work done, down to these labs around town, that I'm not sure what category they're in now, but those are medical laboratories. They're not doing research. They're not doing R&D. So anyway.
Those are more retail uses, really.
Yeah, it's a B zone, isn't it?
It's a what?
It would be a B zone.
It should be in a B zone. It's a medical office.
But they're laboratory. Well, okay. Because the laboratories technically aren't there. Okay.
Yeah, right. They usually just take your blood and send it. Although they do some, hydrofusion and stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not going to change
Moving
it.
along.
All right. The first one with the deletion is to, the fifth one is to remove the similar uses which are clearly supportive. I think that just clarifies it. We had discussion on that before. Deletion of the warehouse. Go ahead. Somebody had a comment? Warehouse, wholesale, and storage, we've got those covered elsewhere.
Well, the way my printer printed this thing, warehouse shows up in 3 of the blocks on this page.
Right, but one of them is, a couple of them are red, which means they're being deleted.
Thanks, Dave. I forgot about
You
that.
print it in black and white.
Okay, we are moving in the right direction here.
Okay, the next one is self-storage, which is blue. We're adding that as a site plan. Seems like a pretty innocuous thing.
Yeah.
Okay, again, all the next 4 are no change.
Yeah,
Truck terminal,
it's when I'm reading this one that our definition of the zone makes no sense. So if you have 10 acres, you can't have a contractor's yard, but if you have no acreage, you can have a contractor's yard. How does that make sense?
It's a good point.
well, I'm not sure that the minimum 10 acres makes any sense in any way.
Well, I think it would. I mean, I don't know if we got rid of quarries entirely, but I think there is some, and the contractor storage, yeah, you probably want more, some minimum acreage. I don't know what the right number is, but I would think that you would want some, and it's also the side yard protections are all backwards. I mean, you got to have more side yard for a church than you do whatever we were on, contractor storage yard or grain storage. I think, so I think we need to revise the definition there.
Okay, well, let's do that after we finish this.
All right, yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
we're getting rid of and warehouses in the bottom line, truck terminals. I don't think we've got any problem with that. You got any problem with that?
No, because warehouses is now number 3.
Warehouses are they're on the top, right?
Yeah, the third line,
Yeah.
The third one,
Yeah.
right. And then the next page is no change than the first one. And then we took out wireless telecommunication because that's controlled by the siting council. Medical marijuana. Go ahead.
Dave, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is that true all the time? It's always controlled by the siting council?
I believe so.
For wireless communication towers, yes. It's
Okay.
strictly under statute by has a sole jurisdiction of the siting council.
Oh, good. Thank
Okay, medical marijuana production facilities didn't change. Getting rid of sand and gravel quarries because we've used them up and closed them up or whatever.
So is that true that we have no more places? I mean, they did that quarrying over on Sand Hill. Well, you wouldn't know that. I don't know, Melissa, you weren't there then. But, we had that. There was some up in the North Simsbury. Would there no longer be any?
Well,
Those really were sand and gravel operations. They weren't quarrying. I mean, I don't want to nitpick here, but the quarrying, the last active quarrying was over on Terry's Quarry Road.
Yeah. Well, what do you call the sand pile that's behind Town Garage?
That's part of reflective of a sand and gravel operation. They didn't do any quarrying. I don't think, my mind, I associate quarrying with stone.
Well, but this is all of them, sandstone and gravel quarries.
you. So sand pits?
Yeah.
Well, it's manufactured products.
Right.
Extracted.
So that use right now is prohibited in your I-1 and I-2 zoning districts. Deleting it, the reason why I'm suggesting deleting it is, in my experience as my previous community, we had a use similar that we defined in our regs, and someone applied for a use variance to land it someplace else. Basically, the attorney advised us, listen, if you have a use that's defined in your regs and they apply for a use variance, they can in theory land that sand and gravel pit someplace else. I mean, you really don't have a lot of properties that probably will have a sand and gravel operation occur in town at this point. And the example that you gave on, for example, what Simscroft did over on Powder Forest Drive. I mean, that was kind of getting the site ready for development. It wasn't as kind of what Bruce was alluding to, a permanent operation that's going on there. It really was site prep and then they're gone. This is, here, this use is here to stay if it is allowed.
Yeah, well, the town garage is permitted to stay, right?
Yeah.
Until they run out of sand.
Right. But in that sense, they could be existing non-conforming and they're protected under statute.
Right,
If they still sell the sand that's there.
So the logic you use would be okay for the car lot on Albany Avenue because that's site prep, not quarrying.
Correct.
So
Assuming there's an approved site plan or development plan associated with the activity.
So by extrapolation, Mike, I just want to make sure, clarifying, if we leave this in here and say we're not allowing it here, in theory, like everybody who lives on Sand Hill Road, it's all sand. Dig down a couple of inches, it's all sand. So if my neighbor's house burns down and they decide that they want to dig sand there, if there is this use and we don't take it out, they could theoretically apply for a use variance to dig the sand out of their property instead of putting a house on it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So even though we say it's a no, because it's defined as a use, even though we're saying it's not allowed?
So if someone applies for a use variance and it's a use that's in your regulations, they can land it anywhere. If it's a use that's not in your regulations, they can't go to the ZBA and say, I want a use variance to get an exception to the rules. They actually have to do a text amendment change to add it to your regs. It's just protecting that use from landing places that may have unintended consequences.
So it could land somewhere outside an industrial zone.
Through a use variance avenue.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So what you're saying
Let's
is
take it out.
Yeah, you're better off not saying it than to say no, which is what you're saying.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
By all means, let's remove it.
Yeah.
But
They dig it under your house.
Mike, tell me I know the part of the debate over in Canton is the appropriateness of that site for the project that's being proposed. And in Canton, they have a 2,000 yard, if I remember this right, the town can issue a permit for removal of up to 2,000 yards. And then after that, that may be where it becomes a special permit or something after the 2,000 yards. But part of the argument is the suitability of the land when the town's standard is up to 2,000 is one thing, and then over 2,000 is something else. And this project is something like 140,000 yards. So they're using that to convey the perspective that it's not an appropriate site for development in the town, never mind in the particular location, but that's yet to be determined. Do we have a 2,000 cubic yard standard of? No, we don't.
No. Yeah. So they have fill grade regulations. That's basically what it falls under.
Okay.
The town, when I was in Waterford also had fill grade regs, but I think, Simsbury, we don't, but I think you look at you compare the two, they had larger properties, which were, commercially zoned or industrial zoned, aimed for development, which had potential of significant, earthwork activities. You really only have like that property left of a large vacant property that would require significant, I don't want to say mining operation, but that's basically what it is.
Well, anyway,
Okay.
the point is that your feeling is Simsbury doesn't need a set of regulations to provide a framework for that sort of thing in the future. That we didn't need it in the past and we don't need it in the future, based on the topography of the available land in Simsbury.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, the next item is the addition of public utility substations approved by the Siting Council. And why did we add that, Mike?
So actually, and I'm sorry, I didn't save it also. It's supposed to read substations and telecommunication towers approved by the Connecticut Siting Council. And so that would be as of right, okay, no permit required, since the
Okay.
Siting Council already functions as a zoning commission. So
We need to add the telecom in there, but it doesn't really matter because we can't control it anyway.
correct.
Okay, open space and passive recreation, we added.
So this addresses one particular property that has a open space passive recreational use in an industrial zone. You have the town farm off of Wolcott Road, and some property that we own off Wolcott Road, which is actually zoned industrial. So this would address those uses, as right now they're actually technically considered non-conforming. And that's okay. No permits required for that from the commission.
So new person question, can
Yep.
the town technically be non-conforming with its own regulations?
Yes.
Sure.
So unless the only exception of the rule is, let's say that the town could exempt themselves from the regulations. It's allowed under statute, but in order to do that, the Board of Selectmen would have to actually take a vote. So the legislative body has to say, okay, we're
Okay.
opting out of the zoning standards.
Okay.
But until then, we're subject to them.
And I
But they're
believe
not,
that
they're
if
not.
they do that, they can't go back.
That's a good point, Dave. Yeah, that's forever. Once you say goodbye to it, you don't go back and say, we'll be subject to the regs now.
So they could opt out of all zoning regulations?
Right.
But do you have some idea of what percentage of communities in Connecticut exempt the public lands? And then that
Very-
includes the school buildings and all of the properties owned by the town. Is it as rare as one might think, or?
It's a very low percentage. For example, the only town that comes to mind right now, the town of Portland, exempt itself from its zoning regulations, which it kind of it's tough, because then here we're writing regs and expecting everyone else to do the following, yet we don't have to follow the rules. That it's not a conversation for the commission, but it's just to know, yeah, that could happen. But it's like, if I had to say a total of 169 communities, we're talking like less than 5%.
Okay. All right, medical offices and clinics. We think that's a good addition. Good use for, office space that's empty.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So that would include, that description would include a lab, blood testing lab, as Bruce mentioned, right? That would fit our definition of medical offices and clinics.
Yeah, so Quest could open up
Right, anywhere, yeah, in an industrial zone, yeah.
an industrial zone.
So that phrase is sufficient to cover Quest and their competitors. Is that
Correct.
okay?
Retail less than 20,000 square feet.
I was wondering what the principle was of the division here between 20 above and 20, above and below 20.
So 20 is the cutoff. 20 is normally, that's like the junior retailers. And then above 20 is the larger competitors. So the example being like a junior one that's coming, like a Tractor Supply is one that's junior retailer. They normally don't build more than 20,000 square feet total of building space.
So is
Versus,
that a true rumor then?
No, that's confirmed.
Okay, and so what zone is that?
That is B1.
All right, so we allow 20,000 or less in a B1.
Are you saying that's a standard now? Or this is a new
No,
notion?
No, these are new notions. These
Yeah.
are just, I mean,
Yeah, right. Okay.
the commission, and the only reason why I put the square footage is trying this approach is saying, under 20,000 square feet, okay, site plan approval. Once you're getting over 20,000 square feet, we're talking about a large building, a large parking lot, some sort of a stormwater system, meaning where's the protection to the neighbors, to all that stuff. So special exception comes into play.
Yeah, the current business section does not distinguish. We just say retail stores and it's B1, B2, B3. That's all site plan.
But we're talking about the conversion of office equipment, office locations, really.
Yeah.
Well, he's talking about conversion of bowling alley.
That's in a B zone.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that break point for special exception versus site plan seems like an appropriate number.
Yeah, I think the public would like a little more control over the big boxes.
We don't have big boxes.
Well, that's what will protect us from having big boxes.
Yeah. Since we're all friends here, I'm going to share with you a story that when the motion was passed to approve Dorset Crossing, and they needed some accommodation there, but when the zoning commission approved that development for Tony Giorgio, there was a provision in that set the size of new retail buildings in Simsbury at a maximum of 25,000 feet, 25,000 square feet. It passed with one objection. I objected because I thought the notice was inadequate to the current owners of properties over 25,000 square feet. But my point of the story is, while it was passed by the zoning commission, believe me, it did. I have the minutes of the meeting and I have the language of the measure at my house. But the point of interest here is it never made it into the zoning regulations for the town of Simsbury. Although there is no doubt whatsoever that it passed by the zoning commission at that meeting. By virtue, you could see Dorset Crossing is there, and one of the elements of that motion was the 25,000 foot limit. And
Wasn't that a bad?
Some people who were in charge of the administrative processes that support our zoning regulations who didn't care for it, and it didn't ever get into the zoning regulations. So it's never been, arguably it's never been abandoned, but it's never been.
Wasn't that a mixed use application, Bruce?
Yes, it was, because it was retail and residential, and that got rid of one of the quarrying operations, the sand and gravel thing that was up there.
And if we did that with a pad, it was a zone change, and that particular thing goes with that zone change.
Well, I'm not quibbling.
Anyway,
I'm offering some perspective on historical.
Okay, well, there is a
we've
sensitivity to something in the being over 20,000 or 25,000 square feet for sure.
Yeah.
And we're recognizing that here with this special exception, I think. We wanted to add theaters or similar performing arts by site plan.
But I think I was wondering when I saw that if we should make this more direct and say movie theaters and similar movie theaters and performance theaters, to make it clear that it's both movie theaters and performance theaters, rather than just throw the word theaters out there and let people interpret.
That's true, because somewhere else in one of the regs, we exclude drive-in theaters. So you actually have to distinguish between indoor and.
Oh, yeah, all right. Well, maybe that should be here too, that it needs to be contained in a building. Yeah.
So it might be indoor theaters.
Right.
So we should say indoor movie theaters or similar performing arts
No,
facility.
it wasn't just movie theaters, though. We were saying it could be a performing arts theater.
Yeah,
So you could have an improv theater. I don't know,
Right.
movie, maybe one of the groups gets a lot of money and we have a performing, a playhouse, an opera house, the Simsbury Opera House.
Well, there are people looking for places to perform now because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
But they want outdoors.
they want some big place is what they want. So do we have the language that we need there?
Well, what I jotted down was just this. It was sort of an extension to the front of this sentence. So I just changed the phrasing to read movie theaters and performance theaters or similar, movie theaters and performance theaters or similar art facilities, performing art facilities. Actually, I'm confusing myself, but you got the point.
But I think we wanted to make sure they were indoors.
Could you just tie it up with the last bit saying similar performing indoor art facilities?
So Mike, what you have here, is that going to be the total chart? So it's not changes to the existing chart. This will be the new chart,
Yeah.
replacing the one that's in the current guidelines. Okay.
Yeah.
So make sure it has indoor in it, Mike, on this line.
Okay.
Commercial kennels, that's a special exception because I think that's appropriate because of the dog noise.
Yeah. Actually, as I did a little reading of the Glastonbury and Avon zoning regs to get some food for thought here on this issue of what do they do, in industrial type zones that we don't do, or, again, food for thought. But under commercial kennels in Glastonbury in particular, they have some pretty elaborate regulations, but they require that they be indoors. So I don't know if we want to consider adding that or.
Well, commercial,
Yeah,
all the kennels that I know of have indoor, outdoor runs.
well, I haven't been to Glastonbury, but it wouldn't surprise me if they don't have too many.
Well, we have one in,
the one I've
we have one
used
in
in-
North Canton.
The one I use and the one my daughter uses on 177 in Canton, not too far down the road towards Unionville from the funeral home. And it has indoor and outdoor. There's no outdoor sleeping, but there is, if you pay extra, you can have your dog taken for a walk around their property a couple times a day. But
Called
basically,
playtime.
the dogs are sheltered. They're in really secure, and climate controlled space, or they're in non-climate control, but under a roof and fenced in and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
Salmon
Brook has that in Granby too.
I don't know what the neighbors would say.
Anyway, it's a special exception, and we certainly, in granting the special exception, can put constraints on it if they're appropriate for the location.
Especially if it's a 10-acre site. Which is the first one.
We're going to get to that.
Well, that brings up, what about a veterinary office? I mean, we allow a medical office, but what about a vet? We have them in business zones, but why wouldn't, why would it make a difference?
I don't know. I
I mean,
saw
you can
that
have
in
a kennel,
Glastonbury
you can
too.
have a kennel, you can have a medical office, but you can't have a vet. Same type.
I think you should add veterinary operations and veterinary offices and commercial kennels.
In the same one?
Together.
Because, barking dogs can be annoying.
Right.
Sorry.
Zoom meetings. Oh, it's you. I thought it was Melissa.
Oh, no, he's on a staycation right now.
Oh, is he? He went to one of the commercial kennels?
Yes, he's Rhode Island.
Wow. Hopefully that'll be tested.
Do you want to keep that the veterinary offices as with the kennels as special exception, or you want to separate that out and treat it for site plan?
I think it should be a special exception because veterinaries often have hospitals associated with them and more complex things.
Because they got overnight stays.
Overnight stays. Some of them are large animals, some of them are small animals.
That works.
Yeah, so put them together and both have the SE. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now let's go to the setbacks and the 10 acres and discuss those.
Well, how I got started in that, I was looking for the map to see exactly which areas are I1s and which are I2s. And I thought I had a zoning map that was readable.
Do you need one, Kevin?
I'm gonna have to get another one. I thought you had given us one at some point.
Yeah, I can print up some large maps. If anyone wants them, I'll print them up and deliver it to your house.
Yeah, I think as we're going through this, it's helpful to see, especially with the B1 change, the zone change. Anytime you're doing a zone change, it's good to see what's around it in big. Right. And also just to get a picture of all these I1s that we're talking about. Where are they?
I have my large map here if anybody wants to look.
Oh,
how large is it actually?
That's probably
large.
Is it? Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I use the one that comes up with Google. The Simsbury town.
You can't see anything on it. Can't see.
Well, you scale it up. You do it with your fingers on the thing.
It's a PDF
on your computer screen. If you have a laptop, it can get huge. As big as you want, but.
So
but
we
really
have the ability of. Oh, sorry, Chris.
Go ahead.
I'm done.
Here, for an idea of size, there's my zoning map.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Melissa stopped by and picked up a physical copy of all of our regs and a copy of the map. So if anyone wants a color copy, just like what she has, I'll be glad to print one up and deliver it to you.
We have them online.
Yeah, I would like one.
Okay.
Yeah.
See
what happens when you offer, Mike, people accept. I'd like to have one too.
You got
it. It's faster. It's faster. And
it's nice. Have a big bag.
Do you have copies of the June 2020 version of the regulations available for the public?
We print them on demand.
Oh.
Would you like a copy?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. I will get you a copy.
Because we're going to change them here.
There's a PDF online, so you can go through it that way. So, Kevin, do you want to go through those setbacks, or?
Well, maybe Mike can just Mike can put it up on his share. So you can
Let me. I'll pull up the regs.
It's got 3 screens.
We lost Melissa.
Well, you insult her map and she goes away.
Yeah. Now we don't have a quorum. We can't adjourn. So the two things are the setbacks versus I1 versus I2. And
yeah, to me, it's just a question of, do we have those backwards?
And the 10 acres minimum.
Yeah, it's all the same chart. It just moves backwards.
What page is it on?
I just touched the screen. It's
if you look in the regulations, it's on page 29.
29, yeah.
Okay.
You're in
Melissa's
the middle
back.
of the page.
Here comes Melissa back, so we can adjourn now.
Sorry about that. I don't know, it just bumped me out.
You know, we were worried that without you, we couldn't adjourn because we didn't have a quorum.
Happy to provide the service.
Hi, Mike. Yep,
Yeah.
It's coming.
Oh, there we go.
I'm
Here's
only
part
seeing
of it.
half of it, though. I'm only seeing half.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me,
There you
There
go.
it
You're
goes.
getting better.
there we go. There we go.
I just got to get rid of my participants. They're taking up too much room.
Yeah, that's what you were seeing. I had the video screen on the computer blocking it. So here's,
Right.
I want to, you can see it. I-1, you have a 10-acre minimum size for lots, what Kevin was talking about. Then I-2, we have no minimum.
Yeah, so just go up just a little bit. So I-1 is a restricted industrial zone, which
Yep.
to me means that it's less liberal, I guess, right?
Right.
More restrictive. And then I-2 is general industrial, so it should allow more. And then when you look at down at the bottom, I-1, the restricted zone, it has to be 10 acres.
I think you're right, Kevin. I think those are backwards. In other words, those should be switched. I-1 and I-2 have the contents flipped.
All right, what about impervious coverage, though? Which one should have the larger? Is that true?
Well, the maximum's still going to be 65%. It's
No,
just
it says-
one has a greater opportunity for the, you
It only
know,
allows 40 or 45%.
Well, that
yeah.
really affects parking, doesn't it?
Well, it's the
It's the combination.
the
though. It's
building, the whole
plus
building on the
parking.
site.
Mhm.
Mike, where is that section that talks about the standard for impervious coverage, and then they can apply for the difference?
It's in the, I think it was in the parking standards. It's that, or it's under the site plan. I'd have to check where we moved it.
Okay, well, anyway.
But Bruce is correct. It's like, so you can apply for a special exception to increase it by 50% of what's allowed in
Oh,
the
that's
zoning
right.
regulations.
Right.
And so if it was 40 and you can go up 50%, they could go to 60.
Right.
Correct.
Somebody went to 58, right? We had one where it went to 58.
Yeah, Big Y is like at 58 or 59%,
Okay.
or they're 58 and change.
Yeah.
So that was a recent application you had that went to that.
And actually, what would the restaurant, the Chinese restaurant, the Asian restaurant, Asian fusion table, what number? is it?
570.
570. With both of those restaurants built that were approved, wouldn't that have given them a lot of coverage?
Yes, I think they were in the high 50s too.
That's all. Seems like 100. But, okay, there's also an asterisk there that doesn't go to anything, after under impervious coverage. Is it supposed to be in
Oh,
front of?
I missed an asterisk. Underneath the table, it reads, impervious coverage shall include surface area created by buildings, parking areas, and all surface types and circulation drives. So that actually, Bruce, that was your definition that used to be in there in the regs. We had it separate, but when we moved everything into tables, we made sure to put that term underneath every table that has impervious coverage standards.
But the asterisk should be in front of the line.
Correct. That's just, that's Scribner error.
All right, so to go back, do we want I-1 to be no minimum, no lot frontage, 25 front yard setback, is that right?
Mhm.
20 feet side yard, 25 feet rear yard, 40-foot height, and then 40% or 45%? Which one's going to have the higher site coverage?
Well, I think
I don't know.
with no minimum lot size, 45% gives them more flexibility.
If they have no lot, what are they going to be applying? What's the point of the application?
No, just as a minimum. So you could have an industrial plant on 1 acre.
I don't think so.
Yeah, you can.
It's got to meet a whole array of other elements of our regulations. And trying to put a plant on 1 acre or half an acre or something silly. It's
Well, remember, it could be a medical facility in an industrial zone.
good point.
You know, they don't need more than an acre. They don't even need half an acre.
Oh, print shop.
So why do we have a minimum on either one?
I don't know.
Well, then let's go back to, I mean, I thought the minimum made sense when you had, quarrying and stuff like that, but we don't allow that anymore. Well, like a contractor storage yard. I think you would kind of want a minimum there.
But Kevin, you don't know what's going to fit the guy's situation. And if he's going to have a storage yard, he's got to have some kind of acreage. So if you set it at 5 and they came in and said, I've got 4.5, we're kind of stuck.
Text amendment. That's how we pay Mike's salary, is text amendments.
So do we want to switch these?
Well, I mean, I'm agreeable to, not doing a lot size, just look back at those things. A truck terminal, does it need a minimum acreage? I mean, it didn't really when there was a truck terminal over on West Street, right?
And we're talking about safety and those kinds of things.
So we just look back over our list we just did and see if, any of those things you think need a minimum height.
Okay.
And which one would you say it was? I1 or I2? I2, right? Well, we got rid of most of the egregious one though. So
Oh, we still have grain sales and storage, contractor storage yard.
yeah, but
Again.
So the point there on that one, Bruce, was you have to have 10. Well, you can't do it in a storage yard, so you can only do it in a site plan on a no acreage.
It's going to be a pretty small storage yard.
Well, that's where I think it was mixed up.
But look at Valley Home and Garden and their area and what they do. I don't know what their lot size is, but it can't be more than 2 acres.
You're right. It's probably less than that too.
Yeah, but I think they're a business, not an industrial.
Yeah.
But they sell grain and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we should have no lot size minimum. That we just can't arbitrarily set something that somebody won't come in and say, oops.
Well, you can set a retail store limit arbitrarily.
Yeah, but that gives them 2 choices. That one's a site plan and the other is a special exception. So that I don't think that is the same thing. Bruce, why don't you make these changes and come back to us with a draft that we can look at. And,
Bruce or Mike?
Mike,
oh, Mike, I'm sorry.
yeah.
What did I say? And then we could take one last look at these things and decide to take it to a public hearing or not.
Okay. I can get this to the commission for next week then.
Just put that whole
Yeah.
chart above it, the minimum requirements, so that we get both 5.3 in the old rigs.
Well, the, if we change anything at all, then we have to have a public hearing.
Correct.
So we're headed for, well, I guess, I mean, we only need 4 votes, so, you know, if there's 4 people here now who feel pretty strongly that we should have the language you've already discussed presented to the public as quickly as possible, then, you know, if we can't get some consensus on these particular issues at our next meeting, we can move forward without resolving these and deal with them the next time we do an amendment.
Bruce, I'd like to see them in place and let
Yeah.
everybody take a look at it.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we made some text changes.
Oh, yeah.
Some
Yeah.
changes. And
Yeah.
it won't take us long to finish it, but
Well, I'm just wondering where you look for some sort of guidance that has a firm basis in terms of these lot sizes. And I'd say probably the same thing about front yard setbacks. Where did these numbers, where do you get them? Who do you ask? How did they get here?
well, I think some of those are historic, you know,
Yeah.
and I suspect the 10 acres was historic, but I don't think it applies anymore.
So what you're thinking the standard should be abandoned, Dave, or you should have a different number there?
I'm thinking the lot size could just go away.
Yeah, abandon
don't
that as
have
a
it.
standard.
Yeah, we don't have it under the business section. And, you know, it does this. And there actually, yeah, as you go up B1, B2, B3, it does get more side yard variance,
So
which is logical. Ours is backwards.
this is backwards. It's a mistake, I think.
Robin did it before she left.
On purpose.
Nice answer.
Well, let me just mention one other thing that I saw in both Avon and in Glastonbury. They have language in their zoning regulations that seem to accommodate, if I was a building owner and I had, you know, an insurance company or something that was white collar stuff on 2 floors, and now you don't have a tenant in the building, they have provisions that would allow the creation of a 2-story, or it could be more, I guess, but a live on the 2nd floor, work on the 1st floor scenario within commercial or industrial space. I suppose anybody who wanted to do that might be able to come to us with a PAD, you know, application. But it would be one building. I don't know if our
Yeah.
regulations accommodate, you know, one building application for a PAD, but these regulations seem to, and I wonder if they're a little ahead of us in terms of what could a building owner do. I don't know what size building, I mean, or what kind of business might find the 1st floor suitable, and then the owner, you know, and they have some limitations on the size of the residential dwelling. But the idea, in fact, it's in the Glastonbury one where it ends with a statement of the purpose of this stuff is to allow for convenient owner occupied or rental units of modest size that foster the goal of village workers living proximate to their place of business. So I don't know. I don't know that that's going to be a major opportunity for us, but because we haven't had anybody sort of come forward with that. And
And
you know.
that would be a B zone rather than an I zone, I think.
So you
yeah,
allow,
but you might ask yourself if you could do it in the B zone too, the way our regulations are written these days.
You allow second story residential uses in your B zones, provided that it's the square footage of the residential use does not exceed 40% of the gross floor area of the commercial use below.
Hmm.
So it's clear that the residential use is subordinate to the commercial
Yeah.
use. That's in your business zones. I mean, you could carry that reg over maybe if there's interest. Or
Is
we
there a
can look
reason
at,
why you couldn't do that in an industrial zone?
I would like to see that myself.
Because actually, in Glastonbury, the square footage limit's 950 square feet maximum for the dwelling unit inside
How much,
building like
950?
that. 950.
That's not
Yeah.
very big, yeah.
No,
It's not.
No, but, and I would see it reversed. You'd put the housing on the top and the offices on the bottom, not put the residential on the bottom.
No, that either I misstated or you misheard it, because the
Well,
residential
that's
is
what I heard. You say on the first floor, they're gonna
the
have the
business
residential.
activity. The business activity of whatever sort is on the first floor.
Right.
And then the residential, the dwelling space is on the second floor, but they don't limit it to one dwelling space. So depending on the size of the building, you could have, in effect, you could have multiple apartment units on the second floor.
well, we have that situation at, what's his name, on Hot Meadow Street there. The restaurant.
Yeah, Simsbury Square?
Hmm?
Simsbury Square?
No, next door, the
Table
restaurant.
570.
Oh, Benny's.
Benny's.
Oh, pennies, I'm sorry.
Upstairs in Benny's, there's 2 apartments.
Good point. Yeah.
And we approved them, and I believe.
Well, I think that use probably predates the zoning regulations. I'm sure the building does.
No. He constructed those. Now, the other thing we've got now, if you look at I-1 office space, we're talking about a lot larger than just,
Yeah.
an upstairs, downstairs situation. You're talking about something where there might be 30,000 square feet on a floor.
That's what I was thinking when I was reading it. Does that really speak to our primary interest is what can we do to help the people who already own the buildings that are either empty or emptying? And I'm
But
not sure.
like in Hartford this morning, there was a story in the Hartford taking the old Attorney General's office and turning that into offices, to residences. I think we ought to think about adding residential conversion to office space somehow. We talked about it, but we didn't add it in our list.
You're not talking about an industrial, right, Dave?
I'm talking about industrial, yeah.
Office industrial?
Yeah, if you have 30,000 square foot building on a floor, let's say 2 floors, 60,000 square feet. Maybe somebody would be interested in converting half of that to apartments.
Yeah.
Do you get into a situation where if you do that, then the people who end up in these apartments or living in these residential areas may very well in the future not be terribly excited about having an industrial whatever on this side and on the other side, and the residential kind of bumping out the industrial someday,
But look at
just causing friction between the neighbors.
look at what our permitted things are. You got office building research lab. You could have people living above a research lab or
Sure.
an office building.
Sure.
A church,
Right.
some manufacturing, yes, they might want to do.
What about the next door neighbor also in the industrial zone might be a heavy industrial use, and it could just be kind of
We don't have a whole
incompatible.
lot of heavy industrial use mentioned in our,
Right.
manufacturing is about, we don't have chemical plants or.
And remember, people aren't being forced to live there. I mean, it's
Right.
if you've got a gunpowder factory, people aren't going to want to live upstairs.
They might want to.
The only people who want to be neighbors are the factory workers who get low rents too.
But we have, what's the 2 buildings, the old, where Simsbury Bank was in Cisco?
Right. Yeah, down in Weetag, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
those are
all-
empty now, right?
Partially. I don't know if it's entirely. Is that an I-1 or is that a business zone, Mike? That's
That's
I
an
need my
I-1.
map. I-1. Okay, see,
Yeah.
those would be great for,
Yeah,
you know,
they are nice buildings. I walk my daughter's dog there occasionally, but they have huge parking capability and big offices.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of
The one in
space.
the back, the Simsbury Bank moved out of, and I think Cisco moved out of it. So I don't know who's there.
I see so few cars there that I think whatever the building was, the tenant that was in the front, the first one that you would come to when you pull in the driveway in the parking lots, that building I think is totally empty. And the one that, may be an addition or something, but the one that you would enter from, you'd have your back to the river and walking to the west to enter the other side. And I think that one has some tenants in it, but I'm not sure. There's really two main entrances. There's a main entrance on the south side and a main entrance on the east side. And anyway, I think there's some people there based on the number of cars, but these days there's so many workers working at home that it's hard to tell. I think some of these companies have way too much space they're paying for, but as their leases are expiring, they're going to be looking for new homes that have a small.
I think Liberty Bank is paying for that space until November or something.
And Global Atlantic was down there somewhere, one of the insurance companies. Had left, split off from the Hartford. But I think all those sites, someday we may find it down at the Farmington Valley Mall, whatever it is called now. You might be finding we need something else in there instead of retail shops.
Amazon warehouse.
Yeah. Actually, have you ever been in one? I visited the one in the Minneapolis area last year.
Yeah.
It's a sight, believe me. I just can't relate to the workers in there every day doing those jobs. Oh my God.
But what they're talking about is putting the final delivery thing in shopping malls.
Yeah.
So you could have, in West Farm, you put the final delivery. So the chip, they come in and then send out their little vans from there.
Well, Kohl's is doing that now.
For Amazon? Or are they taking it back? Are they doing the?
You can take it back. I don't know if
the returns.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And there was Burlington, Vermont. I saw the article where they had their high school was in an old Macy's in the mall. It was cheaper to remodel than to build their new school. And even left some of the murals. They had, Levi Jean mural in the library or something like that. So
There's some thoughts.
and the tile, now they have tile and elevators around the perfumes and stuff. It's still in their high school.
You think Farmington knows about that?
I think they're doing okay so far. I'm not so sure about some of the other. Yeah, Farmington could do it, right? They got to build a whole new $60 million, whatever it is.
It's higher than that, isn't it?
Yeah. So maybe we could put Latimer in there in the farming, in places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something.
Anyway.
Well, but Latimer's not that far from the vacant buildings we were just discussing down there at
Right.
Yeah.
So
Maybe they could have an annex.
Let's think about the possibility of adding residential into this. I don't know where we go to find something.
Mike knows.
You have any ideas, Mike?
Yeah, I got a few towns. I'll look at their regs.
Apparently, Glastonbury is a good start.
Well, the thing about Glastonbury is their regulations are their entire scheme is based on form-based zoning. And so you could find similar issues, but they don't have I-1 and I-2. I mean, they're light years away from that. And Avon is also, but they got to tackle the same issues we're dealing with. But in some ways they do it a little differently. The framework is, the wording and the headings and the characterization's different, but somewhere in there. So Avon and Glastonbury were the two I looked at. Again, today I was just looking for food for thought on what could we do. And that idea struck me as probably a good one, but I'm not sure if there were takers, in the immediate future for some conversion of industrial space to residential. I think, local real estate agents would have encouraged them to come forward for at least a conversation with Mike or an informal thing with the zoning commission to see, what we might think of something like that.
Well,
And
that
so
would,
yeah,
well, it would be a text amendment or something that,
yeah,
so it could be done anyway, but we're
Right.
trying to find things that might encourage people to think out of the box, maybe.
yeah. Well, to sort of jog the thinking a little bit to a higher level or in new directions.
So Mike is gonna do that. We're gonna flip the table. We're gonna complete this table that we've worked on tonight and consider adding something about residential conversion of office space. Maybe we should restrict it to office space. From office space.
I don't know, if you had some small manufacturing, make that bicycle guy. If you kind of created your own bicycle factory, why couldn't you live?
Oh, yeah.
So it could be a manufacturing.
Maybe we could get somebody who wants a distillery and then live upstairs.
Right, so they don't have to drive home drunk.
Yeah.
A brewery would be better.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've reached the end.
Okay.
I have a motion to adjourn.
All right, a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second that.
All in
Melissa,
favor?
thanks for your class here in cooking that you're going to set off.
Sorry,
the
I'm about to
smoke
set
alarm.
off my smoke detector, so I'm just
Yeah.
sitting on mute.
Great smoke.
Okay,
Great cooking
Okay.
class. Right, bye.
Sorry,
you,
working
everyone.
I think
mom,
we're
you
done.
know?
all in favor? Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
We're done.
Good
Okay.
night.
Have a good night. Yeah.
Goodbye.
Thanks, guys.